So what are these kind of scenarios that we might look at to consider changing? And I've got a list of them up here. Some of them relate to the time that an arrested person might spend in the jail before a decision is made in court about whether they're guilty or not guilty in their sentence. And some of them would happen after sentencing. Can I ask you to what extent you're interested in having me run through some of these? Because we are. Okay, there's at least some interest. Okay, I'll be happy to do that. One of the ideas is called diversion. And diversion means that you're trying to kind of find a path to keep the person outside of the justice system to the extent that you can, in other words, to divert them away from it. And depending on their circumstances and what they're accused of, you might have a diversion program that would, for example, you could consider if they participated in certain programs for a certain length of time and stayed out of trouble, that the charge might be dropped. That's an example of a kind of diversion program. There are other kinds of changes that really just, gosh, I'm so sorry, that look really at how long it takes in your system for certain things to happen. Once I'm arrested and delivered to the jail, how long does it take before a charge is filed? Am I sitting there waiting for a long time? I learned today that your system is probably pretty effective, actually, in getting people to know what they're charged with and have the arraignment process take place actually very quickly. So here in Whatcom County, there probably isn't a great deal of potential to accelerate at least that piece of it. Other pieces of it, there may be potential to accelerate. I'm not really sure yet. Mentioned the third one. There are a number of other programs that are often called alternatives to incarceration. On the pretrial basis, if I can spend my time during my court proceedings outside of jail, then that might be, I said, released on bail or on my own recognizance. And I don't have a clear enough sense of whether those programs are maximized here yet or not. I'm really not sure. They may be, they may not be. I know you do make some use of electronic monitoring, and then there are other forms of supervision through the probation department which may or may not be applicable. Once you're sentenced, there are alternative forms of incarceration, and you actually already do some of these. You have a relatively recently constructed work center that has programs where inmates work either within the center or go out on programs, and you have also programs for people who are not in custody to participate in work programs. Another one of these kinds of programs that you don't have at the moment is called day reporting, where you come during the day, but you are allowed to go home at night and sleep at home. You might have another kind of variation on this that would be release for educational participation, where you would go out during the day and come back and be supervised and stay there at night. Other places have inpatient substance abuse programs. So how do you decide whether some of these programs would be relevant or not? How does this decision get made? In the jail planning process, you would carry out a detailed profile of the inmates who are in custody over a certain period of time. And you'd want to know a great deal about them, not only the charge that they're in on and their criminal history, but also their mental health status, whether they've been substance abusers or not, whether they've completed a certain educational level, what their family situation is. It's a whole lot of information that would begin to tell you what that person might be able to benefit from in the system, and then compare the needs that you see from that profile to the resources that are currently available or could be available, made available within the system. And that would be an important part of the needs assessment. So the result of this would be a breakdown of the number and types of beds by the classification of inmates, some allowances for some technical factors that I won't go into, and the projections made over time with the adjustments that we've talked about to the system. And I just thought some of you might be interested, as we talk about these alternatives, to some of the programs that have been implemented in Washington State and have been evaluated by the I think it's the Washington State Institute of Public Policy. I think that's the right things for the acronym. And they're rank ordered here from the ones that were proven to be the most effective to the ones that were effective but not as effective. So you've got the little legend down at the bottom, but if they've got 3 stars, that's better, and if they've got 1 star, it's good, but it's not as good. So you see vocational education in prison. Well, you've got them for longer in prison, but that's something that certainly could apply also in jail. Intensive supervision, which is more like a probation type of program. General education, cognitive behavioral therapy, work industries, drug treatment, either in prison or in the community, drug courts, which you do have here, employment and job training, and for sex offenders, that kind of treatment with aftercare. So just a kind of suggestive list of things that have been shown to work here in this state. So we've done the needs assessment now. We have an idea of how many beds we need. We've agreed on it. Now we look at the different ways in which we might be able to obtain those beds. The first step would be take the number of beds and turn it into an estimate of how much space we need, so we've got an idea of how large this envelope is that we need to accommodate. Then we can look at some alternative ways of actually accommodating it. So we'll look at the existing facilities, get a sense of whether they can be reused, whether they could be remodeled, whether they could be added onto or not, and then look at a whole range of other options as well. Like I said, renovate, add on, build part or all of it new, build at a single or a multiple location, depending on scale and efficiency. So when we look at these options, again, what we want to know, how much is it going to cost me to build? How much is it going to cost me to operate? If we're operating at multiple locations, there may, depending on scale, there may be some duplication of efforts, there may be duplication of some spaces and some staff, there may be transportation back and forth. We have to take all these things into account. We come up with these estimates of cost, and then the question is, how are we going to pay for it? Here in Whatcom County, we have some revenue stream from your sales tax increment that would contribute something to this, but I think I can say undoubtedly not enough to build a brand new jail. So what would be the funding options that were available to pay for the rest? And without being able to pay for it, you don't have a project. So you need to figure that out before you go very much further down the road. But that tells you what's feasible and allows you to select the most feasible and the best option. The next step in the process is what I referred to as programming. There are 2 pieces of it as we practice it, operational programming and facility programming. So the operational program means really looking in great depth at how this jail is going to operate. In terms of process, we also want to have some substantial and broad input. A jail programming task force would be a little bit different than probably the larger, broader task force that helped us through the needs assessment and site selection phases, because now we're really looking at the details of operation. So clearly, the sheriff and the corrections staff are going to be the lead there, but all the different functions that need to occur in the jail must be represented. So you've got to have the folks who are responsible for food service, for providing medical and mental health services. They have to be involved. If you've got a laundry provider or maintenance people, IT folks, get them all together and look in detail at how the facility is going to work and what the spaces are going to be. So I've put another piece in called benchmarking tours of recent facilities. I'm going to take you on a benchmarking tour, the armchair version here, by showing you a bunch of slides, and that's great, and it's really a useful introduction. It doesn't begin to compare to actually going out and visiting the facilities on the ground, talking to the people who are working in them, for that matter, who are confined in them, and really seeing with your own eyes and touching it with your hands how it actually works. But so the tours are something that I strongly recommend. We've done that with essentially every jail and every other facility planning project that we've done. It's my philosophy that the operational decisions, the decisions about how the jail is going to run and work, should drive facility decisions and not the other way around. If you're not explicit in instructing the architect about what you're going to do and why, the architect will end up making decisions for you that will constrain you in how you do them. So that's why we start with this. So the pieces then of the operational program that we talk about are listed here. I'm not going to go into all of them, but taken together, they really give you a picture of how this jail needs to operate and why. I will talk about starting off with a mission statement and a clear articulation of what the goals and objectives are, even kind of what you could say the correctional philosophy is. What are we trying to achieve here with people and why? And as I show you some of the environments that result from these decisions, you'll see, because, I mean, if you just were really kind of crude about it, you could imagine correctional philosophies ranging from highly controlling and even punitive to more person-oriented and trying to provide an environment that reduces stress and is more, for want of a better word, maybe more humane. And you'll see a lot of examples like that as we go through the slides. What else is worth kind of mentioning here?